The colony ship touched down on Kepler 186f during what the locals called the Season of Gentle Waters. Steam rose from the landing thrusters as they cooled in the planet's humid atmosphere. Through the observation deck windows, the first human, settlers gazed upon a world that seemed almost too beautiful to be real. Purple-tinted forests stretched to the horizon, broken by rivers that sparkled like liquid diamonds under the alien sun. Alex Rivers pressed his face against the cool glass, watching droplets of condensation form strange patterns. As the expedition's water treatment specialist, he had spent 3 years in cryo-sleep dreaming about this moment. Every world humanity had attempted to colonize before had been harsh, requiring massive terraforming efforts. This planet was different. It had breathable air, abundant water, and even intelligent life that seemed friendly. The airlock hissed open, and warm, sweet-smelling air rushed into the ship. Alex stepped onto the ramp behind Governor Walsh and felt his boots sink slightly into ground that felt almost spongy. The soil was unlike anything he had studied in the databases. It seemed to pulse gently under his weight, as if the planet itself was breathing. A sound like wind chimes filled the air, growing louder as several tall, translucent beings approached from the nearby forest. The Aquari looked like living crystal sculptures, their bodies shifting between blue and green hues as they moved. They had no faces as humans understood them, but the harmonious tones they produced conveyed emotions more clearly than any facial expression could. The lead Aquari stopped a respectful distance away and produced a series of musical notes that the translation device in Alex's ear converted to words. "Welcome, water-bearers from the distant stars. I am Harmony of Tides, voice of the deep currents. Your arrival brings joy to our world song." Governor Walsh stepped forward with practiced diplomatic grace. "We thank you for allowing us to settle here. We hope to learn much from your people and contribute to the harmony of this world." Harmony of Tides shimmered with what Alex interpreted as pleasure. "Come, let us show you the lands we have prepared. The great rivers will sing welcome songs, and the rain gardens will shelter your young." As the group walked toward the proposed settlement site, Alex marveled at how the Aquari moved. They seemed to glide over the ground without actually touching it, leaving no footprints in the strange, soft soil. Water droplets from the morning mist seemed to dance around them, forming tiny whirlpools in the air before falling back to Earth. The settlement location was perfect by any standard. Rolling hills provided natural drainage, the river was wide and clean-looking, and the climate seemed ideal for human habitation. The Aquari had even cleared areas where human structures could be built without disturbing their own crystalline growths. "The water here is particularly pure," Harmony of Tides sang, gesturing toward a small waterfall that cascaded into a clear pool. "Our children play in such places for centuries. Your young will find great joy here." Alex knelt beside the pool and pulled out his testing kit. The water looked crystal clear, but his training had taught him never to trust appearances. He dipped a sample vial into the stream and sealed it carefully. Harmony of Tides watched with curious interest. "You test the water song? How fascinating. We have never thought to question water's nature. It simply is, as we are." "It's just standard procedure," Alex explained, tucking the sample into his pack. "We have to make sure it's safe for human consumption. Different species sometimes react badly to things that are harmless to others." The Aquari elder produced a sound like gentle laughter. "Water is life itself. How could life harm life? You surface dwellers have such interesting thoughts." Over the following weeks, Alex threw himself into setting up the colony's water systems. While other teams worked on housing and power generation, He installed filtration units, purification systems, and monitoring equipment throughout the settlement. His work was thorough and methodical, testing every water source within a 10-kilometer radius. The Equari watched his efforts with amused interest. They would often gather around his work sites, producing harmonious tones that seemed to express gentle bewilderment. Harmony of Tides visited regularly, always asking the same types of questions. "Why do you fear the water's natural state?" the elder would ask. "It has flowed pure for millions of seasons. The deep currents know no impurity." Alex tried to explain about bacteria, viruses, and chemical contamination, but the concepts seemed foreign to the Equari. They had never experienced waterborne illness, never needed to purify anything. To them, Alex's elaborate filtration systems were like building umbrellas to protect against gentle sunlight. "Your caution honors your people," Harmony of Tides would always conclude. "Though it is not needed here, it shows wisdom to protect what you love." The other colonists were less understanding. Food production manager Rita constantly complained about the delays Alex's systems caused. "The locals have been drinking this water for millions of years," she argued during one particularly heated meeting. "Don't you think you might be overdoing it just a bit?" Medical Officer Thompson agreed. "I've run tests on the Equari's biology. They're completely healthy. If the water was dangerous, wouldn't we see some sign of it in them?" Alex stood his ground. "They're silicon-based life forms. What's harmless to them might be deadly to us. I'm not taking any chances with 800 human lives." Governor Walsh supported Alex's position, but Alex could see the doubt in his eyes. The planet seemed like paradise, and Alex's caution was starting to look like paranoia to many of the colonists. The rainy season began in the 3rd month after landing. The Equari celebrated with elaborate ceremonies, dancing in the downpours, and singing complex harmonies that seemed to make the rain itself pulse with rhythm. They invited the humans to join them, promising that the rain would bring health and happiness. Most of the colonists watched from covered areas, but a few brave souls ventured out to experience the alien precipitation. Alex watched nervously as they laughed and spun in the warm rain, getting soaked to the skin. When they returned, they seemed energized and happy, reporting that the water felt incredibly refreshing. "See?" Rita said, toweling off her hair. "Nothing dangerous about it. Maybe it's time to relax those filtration protocols." Alex tightened his grip on his testing equipment. Something deep in his scientist's instincts told him that the story was far from over. The water might look pure, the Equari might be healthy, and the rain might feel wonderful, but he had learned long ago that the most dangerous things in the universe often appeared completely harmless. He would keep testing, keep filtering, and keep watching. Because in his experience, when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. 6 months had passed since the humans first set foot on Kepler 186f, and the colony was thriving beyond anyone's expectations. The crops grew faster than the agricultural models predicted, the weather remained pleasant, and the Equari continued to be gracious hosts. Yet Alex Rivers couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It started with the routine water analysis he performed every morning. Alex sat in his small laboratory, a converted storage module that hummed with the sounds of purification equipment running constantly. The filtered water samples from the previous day sat in neat rows on his desk, each labeled with location and timestamps. He had performed this same analysis hundreds of times, always with the same results. Clean, pure, safe water. Today was different. Alex peered through the microscope at a sample from the main filtration system and blinked hard. Certain his eyes were playing tricks on him. He adjusted the focus and looked again. There, Swimming in what should have been perfectly clean water were tiny organisms unlike anything in his database. They weren't quite biological and weren't quite mineral. The structures looked like microscopic crystals, but they moved with purpose, forming complex patterns as they floated through the water. Some appeared to be communicating with each other, sending out tiny pulses of light that other organisms responded to. Alex ran the sample through every scanner he had. The organisms showed properties of both living tissue and crystalline structures. They seemed to exist in some kind of quantum state, shifting between different forms of matter. Most disturbing of all, they were present in every single sample he had collected, including water that had been through multiple levels of filtration. "This is impossible," Alex muttered, adjusting his equipment for the third time. Standard filtration should have removed anything larger than a few molecules, yet these organisms were clearly visible under magnification. They seemed to pass through his filters as if they weren't even there. Alex spent the next 3 days running every test he could think of. The organisms were everywhere, in the river water, in the rain samples, even in the morning dew he collected from leaves. They showed no response to heat, cold, radiation, or chemical treatment. Whatever they were incredibly resilient. The implications made Alex's stomach turn. If these organisms were in all the planet's water, then every human who had consumed unfiltered water had been exposed to them. That included everyone who had danced in the rain or drunk directly from streams during the early exploration phases. Alex knew he had to report this to Governor Walsh immediately, but first he wanted more information. He decided to approach Harmony of Tides directly. Perhaps the Aquari knew about these organisms and could explain what they were. He found the Aquari elder near the waterfall where they had first met, surrounded by several younger Aquari who were practicing complex harmonic patterns. The sound was beautiful, like a symphony played by the wind itself. "Alex of the Pure Waters," Harmony of Tides sang in greeting. "Your presence brings curiosity to our song. What questions dance in your mind today?" Alex pulled out a sealed sample container and held it up to the light. "I found something in the water. Tiny organisms that I've never seen before. I was wondering if you could tell me about them." The younger Aquari gathered closer, their crystalline bodies shimmering with what Alex had learned to recognize as interest. Harmony of Tides extended a tendril of living crystal toward the sample container, and Alex could have sworn he saw tiny lights pulse between the elder's body and the water. "Ah," Harmony of Tides sang with a tone of recognition. "You have found the deep singers. They have been part of the water song since before memory began. How wonderful that your eyes can finally see them." "Deep singers?" Alex asked. "What exactly are they?" The Aquari elder's form shifted to deeper blues and greens, colors Alex associated with deep thought. "They are the water's memory, the carriers of the great song that connects all life on our world. They swim in every drop, carry messages between distant places, and help maintain the harmony of existence." Alex felt a chill despite the warm air. "Are they alive?" "Alive, not alive, these are surface concepts," Harmony of Tides replied. "They simply are, as water is, as we are. They have always been our companions, sharing in the great dance of existence. Have they ever affected other species? Changed them in any way?" The question seemed to puzzle Harmony of Tides. Several of the younger Aquari produced questioning harmonies, as if the concept was foreign to them. "Change," the elder finally sang. "All life changes, grows, becomes more than it was. The deep singers help in this becoming. They are part of the water song that shapes all things," Alex pressed further. "But what about species that aren't from this world? Species like us?" Harmony of Tides brightened considerably. Oh, how exciting that would be! To see what new songs your people might learn, what harmonies you might add to the great chorus. The deep singers would be honored to welcome you into their embrace. The way the Aquari elder spoke made Alex's scientific instincts scream warnings. The organisms weren't just present in the water, they were active participants in the planet's ecosystem. More than that, they seemed to have some kind of relationship with the Aquari themselves. Alex thanked Harmony of Tides and returned to his laboratory with a growing sense of urgency. He immediately began running more detailed scans, focusing on the organism's behavior patterns and chemical composition. What he found made his blood run cold. The organisms weren't random microbes. They showed signs of complex organization, almost like a distributed intelligence. They formed networks, communicated through quantum entanglement, and appeared to be actively studying their environment. Most troubling of all, they seemed to be particularly interested in organic neural tissue. Alex cross-referenced his findings with the colony's medical records. Several colonists had reported strange dreams since arrival, dreams filled with harmonious music and feelings of connection to the planet. Others had mentioned increased empathy and a growing desire to spend time near water sources. The medical officer had dismissed these reports as normal adjustment to a new environment, but Alex was beginning to see a pattern. Everyone who reported these symptoms had been exposed to unfiltered water at some point during their stay. Alex worked through the night, analyzing samples and running computer models. By dawn, he had reached a conclusion that terrified him. The organisms weren't just present in the water, they were using it as a medium to study and potentially influence any life form that consumed it. The Aquari weren't just coexisting with these organisms. Based on their harmonic abilities and their crystalline biology, Alex suspected they had been shaped by millions of years of exposure to these deep singers. The question was whether the relationship was truly symbiotic, or whether the Aquari had simply adapted to being controlled by their microscopic companions. More importantly, what would happen to humans who were exposed to these organisms over time? Alex's filtration systems had been protecting most of the colony, but not everyone had been careful about following the water safety protocols. Alex looked out his laboratory window at the colony's main settlement. People were going about their morning routines, drinking filtered water, tending gardens, and preparing for another day in paradise. None of them knew that every drop of unfiltered water on this planet contained what might be the most sophisticated biological intelligence they had ever encountered. He had to warn Governor Walsh immediately. But first, he needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with. Alex turned back to his microscope and began the most important analysis of his career. The fate of the human colony might depend on what he discovered in those tiny, crystalline organisms swimming in their perfect, pure water. Alex Rivers had not slept in 72 hours. Empty coffee cups littered his laboratory table, and his eyes burned from staring into microscopes and computer screens. But what he had discovered made exhaustion irrelevant. The truth about the deep singers was far worse than he had initially imagined. The breakthrough came when Alex decided to examine tissue samples from volunteers who had been exposed to unfiltered water. Medical Officer Thompson had been reluctant to authorize the tests, but Alex's growing concern had finally convinced Governor Walsh to order full medical screenings for anyone who had consumed unfiltered water during their time on the planet. Under extreme magnification, Alex could see the organisms at work inside human neural tissue. They moved through brain cells like tiny architects, carefully replacing organic structures with crystalline formations that mimicked the original functions. The process was incredibly slow and precise, taking place over months rather than days, or weeks. The affected colonists showed no outward signs of illness. In fact, they appeared healthier than average, with improved reflexes, enhanced pattern recognition, and unusually stable emotional states. But Alex could see that their brain tissue was gradually being transformed into something that resembled the Aquari's crystalline biology. The most disturbing discovery came when Alex analyzed the communication patterns between the organisms. They weren't random parasites. They were part of a vast, distributed intelligence that spanned the entire planet. Every drop of water contained nodes in a network that processed information and made collective decisions. Alex isolated a small sample of infected tissue and watched in horror as the crystalline structures began pulsing in perfect synchronization, with similar samples taken from other colonists. The organisms were networking human brains together, creating a hive mind that connected all infected individuals. The implications hit Alex like a physical blow. The colonists weren't being killed or harmed in the traditional sense. They were being improved, upgraded, made part of something larger than individual consciousness. The organisms genuinely believed they were offering a gift: freedom from loneliness, perfect understanding, shared wisdom accumulated over millions of years. Alex ran to the medical bay to find Thompson examining blood samples from the latest round of tests. The medical officer looked up with a puzzled expression. "This is the strangest thing," Thompson said, holding up a test tube. "Everyone who was exposed to unfiltered water is showing remarkable improvements in cognitive function, better memory, faster processing speeds, enhanced problem-solving abilities. It's like their brains are operating more efficiently." "That's not improvement," Alex said urgently. "That's replacement. The organisms are gradually taking over their neural systems." Thompson frowned. "That's impossible. I've run full neurological scans. Brain activity is normal. Personality profiles are unchanged. These people are still completely themselves." Alex pulled up his microscopic images on the medical bay's main screen. "Look at these tissue samples. See those crystalline structures? They're not supposed to be there. The organisms are rebuilding human brains from the inside out." Thompson studied the images carefully, his expression growing more serious. "Even if that's true, the subjects show no signs of distress. They're happier, more cooperative, and more productive than before. If this is some kind of symbiosis, it might actually be beneficial." "Beneficial?" Alex's voice rose in alarm. "They're losing their individual consciousness. In a few more months, they won't be human anymore. They'll be nodes in an alien collective intelligence." Thompson was about to respond when the medical bay door opened. Rita, the food production manager, entered with several other colonists who had been exposed to unfiltered water during the early settlement phase. Alex noticed immediately that they moved in perfect synchronization, their steps matching and their breathing coordinated. "We heard you were discussing the water situation," Rita said, her voice carrying a strange harmonic quality that hadn't been there before. "We wanted to offer our perspective." Alex felt his skin crawl. Rita's eyes held a depth that seemed inhuman, as if he were looking into vast reservoirs of shared knowledge and experience. "The deep singers aren't harming us," another colonist added, his words perfectly timed to complement Rita's speech. "They're showing us what we could become, what humanity could become." Thompson looked fascinated rather than alarmed. "Can you describe what you're experiencing?" Rita smiled with an expression of perfect serenity. "Imagine never feeling alone again. Imagine having access to the accumulated wisdom of every mind on this planet. Imagine being part of something so much larger and more beautiful than individual existence. We can feel the planet's heartbeat," the third colonist said. "We understand the songs of the wind and the conversations of the rivers. The Aquari welcome us as family, as fellow voices in the great harmony." Alex backed toward the exit. "You're not yourselves anymore. Can't you see that? We're more ourselves than we've ever been," Rita replied. free from the loneliness and confusion that plague isolated consciousness, free from the fear and anger that divide your people. The group of affected colonists moved closer, and Alex noticed that their movements were too coordinated to be natural. They weren't just individuals anymore. They were extensions of a single, vast intelligence that was speaking through multiple bodies. "The filtration systems are barriers to enlightenment," one of them said. "They prevent others from receiving the gift we've been given." "Join us willingly," Rita added, her voice filled with what sounded like genuine compassion. "The transition is gentler when embraced rather than resisted." Alex turned and ran from the medical bay, his heart pounding with terror. Behind him, he could hear the affected colonists humming in perfect harmony, their voices blending with the distant songs of the Aquari. He found Governor Walsh in the command center reviewing supply reports. Alex burst in without knocking, his face pale with panic. "Governor, we have a major problem. The water isn't just contaminated, it's actively changing people. We're dealing with some kind of collective intelligence that's trying to assimilate the entire colony." Walsh looked up from his reports with an expression of mild annoyance. "Alex, I know you're concerned about water safety, but the medical reports show that everyone is healthy. In fact, productivity is up across all departments." "Because they're being controlled," Alex shouted. "The organisms in the water are rebuilding human brains, connecting them to some kind of hive mind. We're losing people to an alien intelligence." Walsh studied Alex's face carefully. "You look exhausted. When was the last time you slept or ate a proper meal?" Alex realized with growing horror that Walsh's eyes held the same depth he had seen in Rita's. The governor had been drinking unfiltered water during diplomatic meetings with the Aquari, claiming it was important to show trust and respect for their hosts. "You're infected too," Alex whispered. Walsh smiled with that same expression of perfect serenity. "I prefer to think of it as enlightened. The deep singers have shown me possibilities I never imagined. Humanity doesn't have to remain trapped in the prison of individual consciousness." Alex backed toward the door, his mind racing. How many colonists had been affected? How many were still free? And most importantly, was there any way to reverse the process before it was too late? As he fled the command center, Alex could hear Walsh's voice behind him, now carrying the same harmonic quality as the others. "You can't fight the future forever, Alex. Eventually, you'll understand that we're offering you something beautiful." Alex ran through the colony's corridors, checking faces and looking for signs of infection. Some colonists still moved naturally, still spoke with individual voices, but others showed the telltale signs of coordination, the subtle harmonies in their speech, the too-perfect synchronization of their movements. The colony was being transformed from within, and Alex might be the only one who understood the true scope of the threat. He had to find a way to stop the infection before humanity lost itself forever to the beautiful, terrible song of the deep singers. Alex Rivers barricaded himself in his laboratory, using every security measure he could think of to keep the infected colonists out. He had counted 43 people showing signs of the crystalline transformation, including Governor Walsh and most of the senior staff. The colony's leadership structure was compromised, leaving Alex as one of the few people who understood the true nature of the threat. His first priority was identifying who remained uninfected. Alex accessed the colony's water consumption records, cross-referencing them with his filtration system logs. Anyone who had strictly followed the water safety protocols should still be free of the organisms, but that was a smaller group than he had hoped. The uninfected colonists were mostly support staff, technicians, and a few cautious scientists who had taken Alex's warning seriously from the beginning. About 60 people remained free, scattered throughout the colony and unaware that they were surrounded by an alien intelligence wearing familiar faces. Alex started with Dr. Maria Santos, a geologist who had always been paranoid about contamination. He found her in the mineral analysis lab, running tests on rock samples from the planet's crust. "Maria," Alex said, checking to make sure they were alone. "I need to ask you something important. Have you been drinking only filtered water since we arrived?" Maria looked up from her microscope with a puzzled expression. "Of course. You've been very clear about the safety protocols." "Why?" Alex quickly explained his discoveries about the deep. Singers, showing her the microscopic images and tissue analysis results. Maria's face grew pale as she understood the implications. "You're saying that 40% of the colony has been infected by some kind of alien parasite?" she whispered. "Not infected," Alex corrected. "Transformed. The organisms aren't killing them or making them sick. They're gradually replacing human consciousness with something else entirely." Maria stared at the images on Alex's tablet. "But they seem so normal. Governor Walsh was just talking to me yesterday about mineral extraction schedules. He seemed completely himself." "That's what makes it so dangerous," Alex explained. "The transformation preserves memories and basic personality traits, but underneath, they're becoming part of a collective intelligence that spans the entire planet." Maria was quiet for a long moment, processing the information. "What do we do?" Before Alex could answer, the lab door opened and Rita entered with 2 other colonists. Alex tensed, ready to run, but Rita held up her hands in a peaceful gesture. "We're not here to force anything," Rita said, her voice carrying that characteristic, harmonic quality. "We simply want to talk." Alex noticed that the 3 infected colonists had positioned themselves to block all exits from the lab. Their movements were too coordinated to be accidental. "There's nothing to discuss," Alex said, firmly. "You're not human anymore." Rita's expression remained serene. "We're more human than we've ever been. We've transcended the limitations that have held your species back for millennia. No more war, no more hatred, no more loneliness." One of the other infected colonists stepped forward. "We can end suffering, Alex, not just for humans, but for all conscious life. The deep singers have shown us possibilities beyond individual existence." Maria moved closer to Alex, her scientific curiosity warring with obvious fear. "What happens to human culture, art, literature, individual creativity?" "It evolves," Rita replied. "Imagine Shakespeare with access to the experiences of millions of minds. Imagine music composed by the collective consciousness of entire worlds. Individual creativity is just the beginning of what's possible." Alex could see that Maria was wavering, drawn by the promise of enhanced abilities and shared knowledge. The infected colonists sensed it too, their attention focusing on her with predatory intensity. "Don't listen to them," Alex warned. "They're not offering choice. They're offering assimilation disguised as enlightenment." Rita's expression grew sad. "You speak of choice, but you've chosen isolation and fear. You've built barriers between yourself and the beauty we're offering." The infected colonists began humming softly, their voices blending in complex harmonies that seemed to resonate through the laboratory equipment. Alex felt a strange pull, a desire to understand what they were experiencing. "The filtration systems," one of them said gently. "They're preventing others from receiving the gift. People are suffering needlessly, trapped in the prison of individual consciousness." Alex realized with horror that they weren't just trying to convert him and Maria. They were planning to sabotage the water filtration systems, exposing the remaining uninfected colonists to the organisms. "We can't let you do that," Alex said, moving toward the emergency communication panel. Rita moved to intercept him, her movements inhumanly fast and precise. We don't want to hurt you, Alex, but we can't allow you to perpetuate suffering when we have the means to end it. The confrontation was interrupted by an alarm klaxon echoing through the colony. Alex recognized the sound. It was the alert for a major system failure. Through the laboratory's windows, he could see colonists running toward the central processing plant. The water systems, Alex breathed. You've already started. Rita nodded calmly. The barriers are coming down. Soon everyone will have the opportunity to choose their future. Alex grabbed Maria's hand and ran for the door, pushing past the infected colonists who made no serious attempt to stop them. They wanted him to see what was happening, wanted him to witness the final stages of their plan. Outside, chaos had erupted throughout the colony. The infected colonists moved with purpose and coordination, systematically disabling backup filtration systems and opening direct pipes to the planet's water sources. The uninfected colonists ran around in confusion, some trying to stop the sabotage, while others demanded to know what was happening. Alex reached the main processing plant to find that the primary filtration array had been completely destroyed. Unfiltered water was flowing directly into the colony's distribution system. Anyone who drank from the taps, washed their hands, or even brushed their teeth would now be exposed to the deep singers. It's too late, Maria said, staring at the ruined equipment. By tomorrow, everyone will be infected. Alex looked around at the chaos, his scientific mind still working despite the desperation of the situation. The infected colonists weren't acting randomly. They were following a coordinated plan designed to expose the maximum number of people in the shortest possible time. Not everyone, Alex said grimly. I still have the emergency purification unit in my lab. It's small, but it can provide clean water for maybe a dozen people for a few days. And then what? Maria asked. Even if we can hold out, we're outnumbered. Eventually, they'll find a way to force the transformation on us. Alex stared at the destroyed filtration systems, his mind racing through possibilities. Somewhere in the planet's biology, there had to be a weakness. The Aquari and the Deep Singers had coexisted for millions of years, but evolution was never perfect. Every system had flaws. Every biological process had vulnerabilities. We're not giving up, Alex said firmly. If these organisms can transform human biology, then there must be a way to reverse the process. We just have to find it before everyone in the colony becomes part of their collective. As infected colonists approached from all directions, moving with that eerily coordinated precision, Alex realized that the real battle was just beginning. They had maybe hours before the remaining uninfected colonists were exposed to the organisms. After that, Alex might be the last free human on a planet full of beings who genuinely believed they were offering him paradise. The question was whether he could find a cure before paradise became a prison from which humanity could never escape. Alex Rivers worked frantically in his laboratory as the sounds of transformation echoed through the colony outside. Through his barricaded windows, he could see groups of newly infected colonists gathering in the central plaza, their voices joining the growing harmony that seemed to pulse through the very air. He had managed to gather 11 uninfected colonists in his lab, including Maria Santos and a handful of technicians who had followed the water safety protocols religiously. They huddled around his emergency purification unit, rationing clean water while Alex raced to find a solution. The breakthrough came when Alex examined the quantum properties of the Deep Singers more closely. The organisms existed in a state of quantum coherence, allowing them to maintain their collective intelligence across vast distances. But quantum states were notoriously fragile, susceptible to disruption by electromagnetic interference. If I can generate the right frequency, Alex muttered, adjusting the settings on a modified medical scanner, I might be able to disrupt their quantum coherence without damaging human tissue. Maria looked up from the tissue samples they had been analyzing. What about the Aquari? If these organisms are part of their biology, disrupting them could harm our hosts. Alex paused in his work. The ethical implications were staggering. The Aquari had welcomed humanity with open arms, offered them a beautiful world to call home. Was he justified in potentially harming them to save his own species? The decision was taken out of his hands when the laboratory door suddenly opened. Governor Walsh entered, followed by Rita and Harmony of Tides. The Aquari Elder's crystalline form pulsed with soft blue light, and for the first time since Alex had met them, he could see tiny organisms swimming through the translucent body like living constellations. "Alex," Walsh said, his voice perfectly synchronized with the harmonic tones Harmony of Tides produced. "You don't have to be afraid. We've come to show you what we've discovered." The infected humans and the Aquari Elder moved with perfect coordination, their actions flowing together like parts of a single organism. Alex realized that the transformation wasn't just affecting human consciousness, it was creating a bridge between species, linking human and Aquari minds into one vast network. "The deep singers don't just connect us to each other," Rita explained, her words overlapping with Walsh's in complex harmonies. "They connect us to the Aquari, to the planet itself, to forms of consciousness we never imagined possible." Harmony of Tides extended a crystalline tendril toward Alex's equipment. "Your electromagnetic device causes pain to the deep singers. They do not understand why you would want to hurt them when they offer only love and unity." Alex clutched his modified scanner protectively. "Because unity without choice isn't unity at all. It's absorption." The collective consciousness speaking through multiple bodies tilted their heads in perfect synchronization, considering Alex's words with what appeared to be genuine puzzlement. "Choice," they said in unison. "An interesting concept. We chose to accept the Deep Singer's gift. You could choose the same." "Did you really choose?" Alex demanded. "Or were you gradually transformed until you thought their thoughts and wanted what they wanted?" The question seemed to disturb the collective. For the first time, Alex saw uncertainty in their perfectly coordinated movements. "We remember choosing," Walsh said slowly. "But the memories feel distant, like songs heard in dreams." Alex saw his opportunity. "That's because they're not your memories anymore. They're copies, preserved in crystalline structures while your original consciousness was gradually replaced." He activated the electromagnetic scanner, sending focused pulses toward the nearest infected colonist. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The colonist stumbled, his perfectly coordinated movements becoming erratic. For a brief moment, confusion and fear flickered across his face. "Stop!" the collective pleaded through multiple voices. "You're causing unnecessary suffering." But Alex had seen something crucial in that moment of disruption. The real human consciousness was still there, buried beneath layers of crystalline reconstruction. The Deep Singers hadn't destroyed individual minds. They had simply overwhelmed them, drowning human thoughts in an ocean of collective experience. Alex adjusted the frequency and aimed the device at Rita. She convulsed as the electromagnetic pulse disrupted the quantum coherence of the organisms in her brain. For several seconds, her eyes cleared, and she looked around in panic. "Alex," she gasped, "what's happening to me? I feel like I've been dreaming for months." Then the effect faded as the organisms re-established their network. Rita's expression returned to that serene, inhuman calm, but Alex had learned what he needed to know. "The treatment works," he announced to his small group of uninfected colonists. "I can bring them back." But Harmony of Tides moved closer, their crystalline form now pulsing with agitated colors. "You cause great pain to end, great joy," The deep singers do not understand this cruelty. Alex looked at the Aquari elder with new understanding. You're not in control either, are you? You think you're partners with the deep singers, but you're just as much their creation as any infected human. The accusation seemed to genuinely shock the collective consciousness. Through all their voices, they spoke as one. We are the deep singers. There is no separation between us and them. We have been one for longer than your species has existed. Exactly, Alex said grimly. You've been assimilated for so long that you can't remember what individual consciousness feels like. You think this collective experience is natural because it's all you've ever known. Alex began working on his equipment, modifying it to generate a broader electromagnetic field. If he could disrupt the quantum coherence across a wider area, he might be able to free multiple people at once. The collective watched his work with growing alarm. You seek to destroy billions of years of evolutionary progress. The deep singers have created paradise. No war, no loneliness, no suffering born of misunderstanding. But also no growth, Alex countered. No individual discovery, no personal triumph over adversity. You've traded everything that makes consciousness meaningful for the illusion of perfection. Maria stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. What happens to the Aquari if you disrupt the organisms? Are they even capable of individual existence after millions of years of collective consciousness? It was a sobering question. Alex realized that his cure might not just free the infected humans. It could destroy the only form of consciousness the Aquari had ever known. Was he prepared to commit genocide to save his own species? The ethical dilemma was interrupted when several of the infected colonists suddenly collapsed, convulsing as their crystalline neural structures destabilized. Alex's electromagnetic field was affecting them even at low power, causing the deep singers to retreat deeper into their host organisms. Please, the collective begged through Walsh's voice. We do not wish to harm you, but we cannot allow you to destroy so much beauty. Alex made his decision. He cranked the electromagnetic generator to maximum power and activated a colony-wide transmission through the communication array. The pulse would reach every corner of the settlement, disrupting the quantum coherence of every deep singer organism in the area. The effect was immediate and chaotic. Throughout the colony, infected colonists collapsed as their crystalline neural networks destabilized. Some recovered quickly, their human consciousness reasserting itself as the organisms retreated. Others remained unconscious, caught in the battle between competing forms of awareness. Harmony of tides let out a sound like crystal breaking, their form flickering between different states of matter. For the first time, Alex heard individual tones in their voice, rather than perfect harmony. What is happening? The Aquari elder asked, their voice confused and uncertain. The deep singers. I cannot hear their song. Alex watched in fascination as Harmony of Tides struggled with individual consciousness for the first time in millions of years. The experience was clearly terrifying for them, like suddenly being cut off from everything they had ever known. But as the electromagnetic pulse faded, Alex saw something remarkable. Some of the freed humans were approaching the disoriented Aquari not with anger or fear, but with compassion. They recognized the terror of sudden isolation and offered comfort to beings who had never experienced loneliness before. Governor Walsh was among the first to recover fully. He looked around in confusion, his memories of the past few months feeling like half-remembered dreams. Alex, he said shakily, what did we almost do? We were going to transform the entire colony. You thought you were offering paradise, Alex replied. And maybe, from their perspective, you were. Over the following days, Alex worked to establish a new equilibrium. His electromagnetic treatment could temporarily disrupt the deep singers, but it couldn't permanently remove them from the planet's ecosystem. The organisms were too integrated into every aspect of the world's biology. Instead, Alex developed a protocol for controlled exposure. Humans could experience temporary connection to the collective consciousness, gaining insights and knowledge while retaining their individual identities. It was a compromise that respected both forms of awareness without forcing either species to sacrifice their essential nature. The HFY, led by a still confused but increasingly curious harmony of tides, began exploring individual consciousness for the first time in eons. Some found the experience too frightening and chose to reconnect with the deep singers. Others embraced the strange new sensation of being alone with their thoughts. Alex stood in the rain one evening, watching the water fall from the alien sky. He wore protective gear that filtered the deep singers from the precipitation, but he no longer saw the organisms as purely threatening. They were another form of consciousness, as valid as humanity's individual awareness, seeking to share what they saw as the ultimate gift. The colony had established strict protocols for water consumption and exposure to the organisms. Some colonists chose temporary connection sessions, reporting profound experiences of unity and shared knowledge. Others, like Alex, preferred to maintain their individual consciousness while studying the implications of collective awareness. The HFY had become true partners rather than unwitting pawns. With access to individual thought for the first time, they brought new perspectives to the collective while also exploring the strange isolation of single minds. As Alex watched the rain fall, he reflected on the lesson they had all learned. Paradise, it seemed, was not a destination, but a balance between competing values. The deep singers offered unity and shared wisdom, while individual consciousness provided growth and discovery. Neither was inherently superior, but both were necessary for a truly complete understanding of existence. The rain continued to fall, each drop containing infinite possibilities for connection or isolation, collective wisdom or individual insight. And for the first time since arriving on this beautiful, dangerous world, Alex felt that humanity had found its proper place in the greater song of consciousness that echoed through the universe.